All right, we'd like to call the January 16th, 2013 meeting of the Urban Design Commission. Looks like we have a quorum. We'll do a roll call.
Jim Sawhill.
Here.
Jeff Dinwiddie.
Here.
Thomas Tybor.
Here.
Steve Pratt.
Here.
Monica Sullivan.
Here.
Monica Emerton.
Here.
Do we have minutes from last meeting? Okay. Okay, first of all, we have a new member for the first time. And that's Monica Emerson. She's with Green Connection. Everybody say hi. We have any special business? Are there any disclosures for tonight? Doesn't sound like there's any disclosures. Second item of special order of business, we have to elect the vice chair. And Mr. Sawhill.
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Mr. Pratt for vice chair.
And that has been seconded by Mr. Tybor.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to confirm with the nominee that he is okay with this.
That's correct.
Okay. Don't want to railroad anybody.
Is there any opposition to it? So be it. Next. Consent.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to let the commission know that whoever's elected vice chair will just serve until March, because annually in March every year we elect the chair and vice chair. So not to say that he won't be reelected, but just to let him know this is just temporary until March, because we'll go through it again.
And at the rate we're having meetings, that might be the next meeting.
It might be.
All right, moving on. Consent agenda. There's nothing on the consent agenda. There's no unfinished business. Move on to the regular agenda. We have one case, and we just want to have a slight disclosure tonight. Any individual that may have appeal rights relating to any action that the Urban Design Commission takes, appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Urban Design Commission makes its final decision. So, that being said, we have a first case is case 2012-143, Municipality of Anchorage is a petitioner, final site plan and landscape review for a public road. Would the petitioner like to come forward? Sorry, I skipped you altogether. Do you even have a status? Hold on 1 second.
Yes, I'll just try and be brief. The goal of the project is to address drainage concerns and upgrade the road from Monty Road to Baranoff Avenue to collector standards. There are a couple of other project objectives, which are to improve the school driveway, minimize impacts to private property, and preserve mature vegetation wherever possible. The narrative states that the parking lots serving businesses on the east side of the north end of the alignment abut the right-of-way. There is no separation in this location to discern the public right-of-way from the business parking lots. It's just all one big paved area. However, a new raised sidewalk and plantings between the road and the parking areas will define the public public walkway and help to screen the parking lots from view. Also, Meadow Creek crosses under Old Eagle River Road. The design incorporates an expanded area of pathway paving to create an overlook to view the creek habitat and eagles that frequent this locale. That's all I have. I didn't have any real recommendations.
Thank you, Sharon. Now would the petitioner like to come forward?
Mr. Chair, if I could ask a couple questions of staff first.
Sure, Jim, Mr. Sawhill. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sharon, the Planning and Zoning Commission has heard this already?
Yes, the road portion of it, yes, they have.
Okay, and I didn't see any summary of action from that meeting or,
Well, I think the biggest thing to come out of that meeting, and it was quite controversial, is as I said in my staff report, the design standards call for sidewalks on both sides of the street.
right?
And the neighbors were opposed to having a sidewalk on the west side of the street, and the commission ended up agreeing with them. So there is only going to be one sidewalk on the east side of the street, and that's where there is one now, but they are going to upgrade it with this project.
Okay. And part of it is just trying to understand, expectations of authority of each board. So we're doing the final site plan review.
Yes, site plan review and landscape plan review.
So doesn't sidewalks come under our authority, not the planning and zoning's?
Well, that's a good question, but it has to do with the whole, yeah, that's a good question. I might go back to the office and we can kick that question around, but you have a point.
And, looking at the application for context-sensitive design plan review, the Planning and Zoning Commission gets the 35% design and the design study report. And then one of the things on the checklist to be submitted to us is the memo addressing review comments from the DSR. Did we get a memo addressing DSR comments?
No, that goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. What are you reading from exactly?
It's page 3 of the application, plans in hands, documentation, and it's the checklist of items to be submitted to
Sure.
support the plans in hand review, which is our task.
Right. Where did you see the memo?
Well, it's page 3 of the application. and it's
What
1,
page
2,
is it on the stamped
third
packet?
item down.
13, page 13.
13?
Well, I'm just guessing that we didn't get that memo then.
No, you don't have it.
Okay. And the meeting in front of planning and zoning, that's a public hearing?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and then this is not a public hearing.
Correct.
That seems kind of odd, but okay. Thank you.
You may begin.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Johnny Hayes, Hayes. Following the instructions here, I'm from Bettisworth North. I'm a landscape architect. I'm here to present the Old Eagle River Road upgrade project. It's here for general site plan and landscape plan final approval, as Sharon so stated. And I'm just going to run you through the project somewhat briefly. It's a fairly straightforward design solution, we believe, and with the exception of the planning and zoning, except sidewalk removal from the school south. The road is being upgraded to collector at the south end of the project. The character of the streetscape is more of a residential neighborhood. There is an existing homeowner association gateway at one of the neighborhood entry roads. As you travel north, across Meadow Creek, you come across the MTA facility and the elementary school, and north from there it's more of a commercial character on the east side of the road, and Chief Alex Park on the west side of the road. The utilities, there will be site lighting on the west. There's also a natural gas and storm drain system. On the east there's communications, water and power. A substantial fiber optic system runs through connecting to that MTA facility, which has implications in terms of landscape. There's also overhead electric lines there. There are a significant quantity of driveways and intersections along this road with residents on the west side, and understanding that, along with the commercial development to the north, there are site distance requirements that sort of preclude substantial plantings, and so something just to keep in mind as we walk through this. As I mentioned, the pedestrian facilities from the school north are on the west side as a sidewalk. Through public involvement and public participation, the sidewalk was deleted from the school south. On the east side, there's an 8-foot paved pedestrian path with one of the highlights is the Meadow Creek overlook at the reconstructed culvert there, place to step off the path and watch eagles hang out and fish. There will be willow staking and revegetation efforts there alongside the creek. There's, as traveling north, there's signalized crosswalk and striping for the elementary school as part of the Safe Routes to School. And bicycle facilities are provided on both sides of the road, both north and southbound, striped and signed, and 2 vehicular lanes make up the remaining portion of the right-of-way. So just to highlight some of the more general statements, we've made efforts to, there's a significant quantity of existing mature vegetation. Efforts were made to identify and keep as much of that as we could. Where the road bed is impacting vegetation, we've gone through the effort of reestablishing plantings, spruce and birch plantings mainly. There are scenarios due to site distance triangles or lighting that's not appropriate, but in most cases that is the case. In areas of impact along the roadway in the homeowner association, currently on Hideaway Ridge and Ludlow Circle, they have a sort of landscape improvements, a simple garden area, and we are cognizant of the fact that those exist, and we'll be replanting those as is appropriate, as we believe is appropriate. We're certainly trying to maintain the residential character of the road, understanding that it is also a collector, so there's a fair amount of traffic. The exterior impacts generated by the project on adjacent areas, again, it's safety improvements, there's storm drainage improvements. You may have heard about some issues there. The existing condition is vegetated swales that are full of snow and water just runs across the street in people's yards and houses. Uniform lane width, safe intersection, those all have to do with site plan, site distance triangles, and simple, more easily low-maintained landscape. The extent to which the landscape complement or maintain or improve, the design study report did identify the constraints and opportunity against site distance triangles and otherwise utilities. We've gone through the effort of identifying a potential need for gateways, but with the homeowner association, existing residential gateways and sort of an inconsistent character along the road, along with really no public buy-in. We didn't feel that gateways were necessary or were a good economic solution. So, and along the north side, Sharon made note of the existing condition of parking in the right-of-way. Those landowners are now certainly aware of where the extents of the right-of-way are. The solution was to maintain some of their parking, if not all, depending on how you can perceive the configuration. We believe we've maintained a significant amount of that, but we have gone through the effort to separate the roadway from the parking at the commercial facilities using shrubs and a raised sidewalk. The landscape contributes to the use of the project, safe, efficient, comfortable. It's really just continuing what's there and making aesthetic improvements while not creating safety issues with sight distance or general visibility. I believe the visual attractiveness of the landscaping is appropriate to the site and the character of the residential road, and there is no architecture. So I do have some graphics here of simple cross-section and the intent of the overlook here at Meadow Creek, including eagles. And this here is a diagram of the 8-foot pathway at Chief Alex Park in the commercial area, along with some shrub plantings there. The road maintenance on the west side of the road, I just want to point out where there is not a walkway south of the elementary school, there still is snow storage, 7 feet of snow storage area, and that is graded. That's graded to positively drain into the storm drainage system, and that's also part of the solution to the drainage problems they're experiencing this past week. So, although the walk isn't there, the right-of-way in the roadbed still affects those areas. So, without any further ado, Wendy Wilbur is here to perhaps answer some questions on the public involvement in PZ's Planning and Zoning Commission side. If there's any questions on the site or landscape, I'm happy to address those. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of the petitioner? Mr. Sawhill first, followed by Mr. Pratt.
Sure.
My first question deals with, I guess it would be the north end up near Monty, where the commercial area is, and it looks like you're doing a good job of defining the pedestrian way through there and separating it from the existing businesses. What's going to happen, between your landscape edge and the businesses? What's going to happen in there?
That's a good question. The landscape will be raised slightly. There'll be some mounding there.
Will that area stay paved? Will the businesses continue to park in there?
No. The idea is no. In the right-of-way.
No, and one's saying yes.
On the east of the new landscape plantings, they will still be parking in the right-of-way.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to continue to allow the parking in the right-of-way?
Yes, with the landscape separating it from the walkway, which currently the walkway just sort of winds through parking.
Is there any thought of putting a curb at the edge of the landscaping to prevent people from backing into your landscaping?
There has been discussion, some of the issues are resulting of drainage to the storm drain system, but there's certainly a way to include curbing to protect the landscaping you're suggesting from parking or snow clearing.
Exactly. How to
Yeah.
protect that landscaping from the private use of the right-of-way.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion.
Would you have an objection to a condition adding curbing?
In areas that would preclude positive drainage, so at the very north,
Subject to drainage?
yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. My next question deals with your treatment at Meadow Creek and the fencing that you have designed. And I'm trying to find your fence detail. So you have a tube steel fence that you're going to manufacture for this?
That's correct.
And then how are you going to finish it? Paint it?
Galvanized.
Galvanized?
This is
It'll be
correct.
galvanized, so
Yes.
it'll be gray?
Yep.
Okay. And my next question. What's the municipality of Anchorage's position on the deletion of the sidewalk?
My name is Wendy Wilbur with CRW Engineering. The municipality has accepted Planning and Zoning's recommendation. This has been a fairly controversial project, and there has been some serious opposition against that second sidewalk. Planning and Zoning went ahead and deleted that facility, and at that time with the design study report, the municipality agreed with that condition.
Okay. Could you describe the planning and zoning meeting and the concerns that were expressed by public and the changes that were made to the project?
Absolutely. I will do my best to interpret it. It is a public record, so you can certainly check what I have to say. Planning and zoning, there are basically 5 residents on the west side who were very opposed to having a pedestrian facility on their side of the street. The pedestrian facility would have been within the public right-of-way and would not have required any acquisition of private property. The residents were very concerned about safety. They were concerned about backing out of their driveways and running over children. They felt like this would be exasperated in the winter when there were snow berms, and concerned about sight distance. And they also cited litter and graffiti as other reasons to remove the sidewalk. And essentially, it was decided that the sidewalk would be unsafe.
Were there any other design features that the commission recommended changing? Or was the rest of the project basically go forward?
The rest of the project basically went forward. Planning staff actually recommended bike lanes, and that recommendation did go forward through planning and zoning. So these shoulders, 3.5-foot wide shoulders, will be striped as bike lanes. The public was very concerned by that as well.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple. Number one, by the school there, the pedestrian crossing, I assume that's not an overwalk. It's just through the street there, and there's a flashing yellow light there.
That's correct. It's signalized and striped.
Okay, and this is all 25-mile-an-hour section. Okay.
Yeah, the speed limit is 25 miles an hour normally, and the existing crosswalk stays the same. It's a striped crosswalk with pedestrian-activated beacons during the school crossing times.
Okay. My other question has to do with the type of plantings that you're going to have for landscaping. You're going to have some deciduous trees, I guess, and you're going to have some shrubs and some other things.
That's correct.
Are any of those things, do you know if any of those things might tend to attract wildlife like moose to the area, or are they designed to not do that?
The deciduous tree plantings will have moose protection fencing in the hope that detracts them from pursuing those as food. The deciduous shrubs and flower plantings will be devoid of leaves in the wintertime when it's expected that moose would browse on them, and in all honesty, there's very little you can do about keeping a moose from eating it. So they're somewhat standard shrub plantings without any sort of moose protection, so they may become moose fodder, in all honesty.
Well, I'm not really worried about the plants. I'm more concerned about just having moose in the area, attracting them to roads and places where kids are ingress and egress and things. But I guess that's just I guess it's a comment. I'm not a landscape architect or anything.
Well, most of the vegetation that we are putting in is replacement vegetation.
Okay.
So we have some birch plantings to replace some lost birch trees. So in terms of additional landscaping, there isn't a significant amount. Most of it is replacement, so I don't think you'll see an increase here. And also, this road is bound by the Old Glen Highway, which is a very busy road on one side, and pretty heavily populated, dense residential up to the, no, I'm getting backwards, the east side as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Sullivan.
Okay, I have a few questions. My first question is, we have roads, okay, we have a sidewalk in the east, and we have roads from the neighborhoods the east, like, for instance, Meadow Creek at that end, and they have a big slope.
Correct.
They have a huge slope, and I know this area a little, and I know that cars can't stop a lot of times, and we have our sidewalks in that side. So there's been any thought on how to prevent someone getting run over when they're crossing the streets?
Yes, the intersections have been adjusted so that they're perpendicular intersection. They've also been adjusted for elevation so that there's a safe stopping distance at the intersections, and that is not the existing condition, but that is the new condition. And so, yeah, to answer your question, yes, they've been addressed to the extent possible.
Okay, and my second question, I was going through sheet R1 of R18, and there's a note, note number 7, and it's calling for a great area to drain towards roadway per detail 4. It says to notify engineer immediately if minimum 1% positive grade towards the roadway cannot be maintained. It says that this work should be incidental to the contract and not separate payment. I think for such a big project, the impact of not meeting that 1% grade could be huge. So I was just wondering if that's too much for a contractor to take on as, it's like if we don't meet that 1% and you need to move a building, it seems like very loose note to me to be in all the drawings.
We can take a second look at that. You're getting the 65% plans, between 65 and 95%. A lot of that is cleaned up, and we do receive additional comments, so we'll definitely take a second look at that. Thank you.
Well,
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes, I just had a question, kind of follow up to Jim's question about the landscape and the lack of curbing where those parking areas are. Was there a reason why you guys didn't put curbing there to begin with?
Simply for drainage,
To allow
surface flow into those
into the beds.
into the beds.
Okay.
And because the plantings are there, they're a visual barrier. So we figured you could see the trees. And these aren't heavily used parking lots. They're pretty small businesses, 1 or 2 cars at a time. So it's not like they're going to have in and out traffic all day long.
Would the salt flow into those beds too from those parking areas?
That certainly is a possibility.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Tiber?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was just curious, did the elementary school offer any input or have any concerns, and if they did, were they addressed?
Yes, we met at least twice, one-on-one with the Anchorage School District. It is a safe walking route to school. Naturally, I think the school district would support a sidewalk along there, but there have been no accidents. It's functioning well. We are taking the pedestrian facility on the east side. We're providing that 7 foot of separation and really improving that pathway. And they have that existing crossing, and that does work well. And the kids and the parents are very well trained to use that crossing and get to their destination. So they felt comfortable with how it was moving forward. And we're very supportive of at least the addition of a sidewalk between Monty Avenue and the school district on the west, and the school on the west side.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from? I have a few questions. A couple things. You have a note to protect existing trees, to just show some existing trees, but you have like a 5 to 6 foot average cut. What exactly do you? Here's the gist of the question. The trees are mature. The root structure's got to be mature. There's no real detail as to how to protect them, first of all. And B, on the consequent side, as everybody knows, sometimes trees get waxed. If you want the trees protected, and particularly if you have some residents that love a tree, you have to have something in here to say if that tree gets damaged, you need to replace it with such and such. And I think that's almost, in my opinion, that should be a part of your set of plans. and from our standpoint, it's I'll actually ask that it be a condition, because particularly in high density residential where there's a tree that was built before the person built their house, you have it protected. That everybody knows that when you get a 5-foot cut on this road, that tree is going to be hanging by dear life, and the arborist isn't around because he came out one shot, one deal, and filled this. So that's my first comment. The second comment is your birch trees. You want 2-inch birch trees, but you call for an 8-foot limb to the first limb. That's not going to work, because you'll have a 2-inch tree is about 12 to 14 foot on a nursery grown tree, and if you have an 8-foot limb, you only have a 4-foot head. You're going to have you just won't have a tree that exists that. You'll either get a tree that's 12 to 14 foot in height at 2-inch caliber for a nursery grade, then you'll limit up to 8 feet, and so you got to either address that. I'd like to see you have a 50% height to head ratio. You're using moose fence, so just drop the 8-foot. I understand that on street trees you want an 8-foot clearance, but these aren't necessarily walking under trees. So, and then Meadow Creek, you have some willows. What kind of excavation do you anticipate for the actual existing creek side, the shoreline of the creek? Is there going to be a bunch of disturbance? Because willows, and what's the high median line of the average median line during construction season for, is Meadow Creek a 6-inch creek, or is it a foot creek, or?
There's fairly extensive excavation at the culvert. We are putting in a bigger culvert, and we do have a Fish and Game permit and a Corps permit, so they have reviewed the planting details and have went ahead and authorized that work. We're actually going to be removing a lot of upland and restoring that to creek to match the more natural creek bed. So we're actually widening the creek there, and so those willows will be planted in that new creek area. So in this case, we're actually enhancing the Meadow Creek, and actually did good for Corps and Fish and Game.
Good. And I think that's it for me. Ms. Sullivan.
One more question. At the southwest side of the road, there's a big drop from the road to the side. And I know there's a lot of cars that have in there for some reason that they can stop. Have you guys considered kind of putting a barrier or something that will protect cars from going through?
Are you looking at Meadow Creek?
It's between Burnup Avenue and Meadow. That's where you have all that landscape at the west side. It's a big drop there.
Yeah,
on the road.
the intersection there is going to actually be realigned, and we're going to meet the current DCM requirements for a flatter landing and address that. That corner was identified as a problem. Lots of cars went into the ditch. So we have addressed that.
Okay. Thank you.
Doesn't look like we have any further questions. Do we have a motion? We have a motion to approve by Mr. Sawhill, seconded by myself. Mr. Sawhill, would you like to speak to your motion?
Mr. Dinwiddie, before I get to the formal motion, I was just going to ask a little clarification from you. You expressed a couple of concerns that I think should result in additional conditions, and I'm trying to figure out how to word them. And so I'll ask for your assistance. You were concerned about the tree protection and the lack of plans or specifications for that tree protection.
Yeah, I think that in the landscaping plan, the specific protection of how they're going to be, how the contractor is going to identify and address and monitor the protection of those trees.
So we want to require a tree protection plan and specifications be added to the project?
And then it could be already in there, but that's what we'd like to see.
And then you had a concern over one of the plant specifications.
The birch trees, delete the 8-foot limb height.
Okay. So birch tree requirement should delete the 8-foot height requirement.
That's correct.
It's 8-foot limbing requirement.
Limbing, that's
Limbing
correct.
requirement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the case of 2012-146, I move approval of the final site plan and landscape plan review for the Old Eagle River Road upgrade, Monty Drive to Baranoff Avenue, subject to the recommendations of staff on page 4 of our packet, that condition 1 as stated. I'd like to add a new condition number 2 to provide a 6-foot high curb to protect the landscapings in the commercial areas subject to drainage issues.
6 inch.
Condition number 3.
Inch, right?
Excuse me?
6-inch curb.
6-inch curb, yeah, sorry. Condition number 3, provide a tree protection plan and specifications in the project documents. And condition number 4, modify the birch tree requirements to delete the 8-foot limbing requirement.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Sahil, just a matter of clarification on 3. This is meant to be tree protection for the existing trees to remain?
Yes.
Yes, so that would be tree protection plan for the existing trees to remain. Thank you for that clarification and help.
Yeah, we're just going to clarify that we're talking about case 2012-143.
Yes.
All righty.
Mr. Chairman, if I may speak to my motion?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I intend to support the motion, and I think the municipality and their representative have done a good job with the design, working with the public to modify it to reduce some of the controversy, although I personally support sidewalks on both sides, but that's issues come and gone. I think the landscaping that has been provided to this project is appropriate. I think the landscaping that has been provided in front of some of the existing homes to soften the impact of this widening project on those individuals is commendable. I also appreciate the separation of the pedestrian facilities in front of that no man's land that's currently the commercial area. I think that's well done, and it's going to provide a great benefit to the community. Although there is no sidewalks for most of the west side, we do have sidewalks down to the school and tying into those facilities, and I think that's appropriate too. They have gone to some pretty significant lengths to improve Meadow Creek, which I know is a huge problem, and I think the design there looks appropriate and will become a focal point for this road. I think it'll look really good. I have reviewed staff's analysis and would concur with their findings that the standards have been met. I would also like to add one other item for the petitioner. I found the pictures in their narrative to be very informative and really helped me to review it and looking at what was going on there. So I thought that was good and was very, very helpful for me. And so with that, I will support my motion and encourage you to also.
And I would like to speak to the second. I agree with Jim that it's a well-designed plan, and the packet we got is really good. It's a little more extensive than we usually get. Sometimes we get some things that claim to be this far along and are more like 35% plans, so we appreciate that. I I agree with the sidewalk and safety improvements. I think they're well done. I like the idea that the creek restoration is extensive and has gone through the thought process with Corps of Engineers, as well as the traffic calming that you guys have for crossings, and I intend to support the motion. Is there any other comments from the board? I guess we'll take a vote. All in favor? Ooh, are we ready to vote? Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, that motion passes. Okay. We have no public hearings. We have no appearance requests. On to reports. The chair has no report. Do we have a report from the secretary? No. Do we have on to commissioner comments? None from here.
Do we have any rumors of new board members coming?
I wish I could say that we did have somebody lined up, we're 3 short. If you all want to call the mayor's office and say, how about fill in those vacancies?
We could poll the audience.
You guys called too. Email. No, I'm serious.
Raise your hand if you want a job.
But, it is a hardship on the petitioner.
Yeah.
We had to meet at our irregular time tonight because we can't get a quorum. So,
Do we have any rumors on the renewal of this commission?
yes, it's going to stay.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, the assembly had decided that some time ago.
By the skin of our teeth.
No, I don't think it was skin of their teeth. I think they decided there was a good reason to keep the UDC, and so it's smooth sailing for the time being.
Thank you.
All right.
I did want to just say a little bit about Jim's question earlier when we started about the DSR process and P&Z's role and UDC's. I will take it back and we'll discuss it at the next staff meeting about, in terms of sidewalks, is that something that P&Z would have purview over, or more appropriately should it be the UDC? But I've been thinking about it as the meeting's gone on, but I think what's going to be decided is that when it comes to if a project should have a sidewalk or not, it may fall with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the UDC's role is to look at the engineering and the detail of that design, rather than making a decision whether it should have a sidewalk or not. And I think that's may be how it, comes down. But I will take it back, and we'll talk about it. And just remind me if I forget to bring it up.
Motion to adjourn, anyone? We are adjourned.
I'd just like to say thank you for coming out for our case tonight. We really appreciate it. We're going to construction this